وليس هذه الأسئلة معلومة الإجابة، ليس الناس من الأفضل أن يتصل على هذه الأشياء كحكم ذلك الصلاة، كحكم الذهب المحرم التي تتصل فيها بين أهل العلم.
Well, brother, he said it's better not to ask about issues that are differed over between the people of knowledge. I mean, if it's something that's important to you, that maybe you have some ishkal about, it's a good thing to ask about those questions. But just to ask, just to see the viewpoint of the Shaykh about an issue is another thing. That's a whole other thing. And if you ask about a question that there's some differing about, as we mentioned before, don't say the Shaykh قال فلان خلافا من قولك, Fulan, he said such and that's different than what you said. Don't do that, because that's from bad manners. Next he said القرب منه ما أمكن. He said next that a person, he should sit close to the Shaykh as much as possible. Doesn't mean that if we have a table and the Shaykh is sitting there, we have one chair for the officiant and one chair for the translator, that you take one of them chairs. Don't do that. But sit close to the table. There's no reason the Shaykh, he's about to begin his class and the people are sitting 6, 7, 8 feet away from the Shaykh. People, they should sit close to the Shaykh, as close as possible in order to benefit from the Shaykh. He also said قِلَّةُ الْحَرَكَةِ إِلَّا لِحَاجَةٍ أَمَامَهُ. And this is similar to what was said before. He said that a person shouldn't move a lot unless he needs to. To the point that some of the people in the past, they used to dislike, and there were statements from the Salaf that they used to dislike the people coughing a lot or clearing their throats in front of them. To the point that some of the imams of the people of Hadith in the past, that if the people were to make too many noises in front of them, they would get up and they would leave. They would get up and they would leave. If they were giving a class and people were sitting in front of them making all kinds of noises, clearing the throats, that the teacher, he would get up and he would leave. He would get up and he would leave. And there are some narrations from the Salaf along those lines. Oh, and this next one. I don't know if we're ready for the next one. Are we all sitting down? Okay. And this point is something that in general, that it also applies to the durus in general. It applies to the classes in general. Not just with our ulama, but this is the adab that a person has with ilm, and how knowledge is obtained, and knowledge is received, and knowledge is learned, and knowledge is retained and memorized. The Shaykh, he said, ترك الاسترسال أثناء الدرس بالكلام حتى ولو أذن بالتعليق. He said that a person, he shouldn't interrupt during the class. He shouldn't interrupt as the class is going on. He shouldn't interject. He shouldn't interject as the class is going on by saying something, even if the Shaykh, the scholar, teacher, even if he gives the permission for the people to comment on what he is saying. It's not from good manners that the people interject as the class is occurring. As the class is occurring. And this is something that happens a lot in the durus that I've seen in this country in various masajid. The people, they like to do that a lot. They like to ask a question, and from involved in this and included in this issue is asking a question during the dars. If you have a question about what was said, write it down and put it to the side and ask it at the end. Ask it at the end. That's the time for the questions. That's the time for the questions. Otherwise, you may interrupt the class, take the benefit away from the people that are listening. So this is, in general, this is from the advice that I've heard from many of the people of knowledge, and is mentioned by many of the people of knowledge in their books and in their writings about the etiquettes of the people of sitting in the durus and sitting in the halaqat is that the people that they don't interject and interrupt the dars. Don't interject and don't interrupt the dars, even if the instructor allows people to comment. What's included in that is that perhaps, as occurs, perhaps as we mentioned before, that when somebody is saying something, perhaps there's another viewpoint he doesn't know about. And you interject in the middle of the class and you say, what about such and such? I heard such and such. Perhaps he doesn't have an answer for you. Perhaps he doesn't know. Perhaps it's an issue that he knows about, but he hasn't memorized the proofs and evidences for it. Perhaps it's an issue that he hasn't really investigated to a high degree. And so it's embarrassing to ask the instructor questions like that, but rather those things, if anything, they should be saved to after the dars. And if the person he doesn't know, he should say, I don't know. Also, the person he should say that he doesn't know. And this is something that's very important. That the people that they don't interrupt during their classes and cause a scene. He said nextly, tarkul as'ila athna ad-dars. And this is similar to what was just mentioned, is that the people shouldn't ask questions during the dars. He said, وَلِيَحْفَظَ الطَّالِبُ أَسْئِلَتُهُ إِلَى مَا بَعْدَ الدَّرْسِ, and let the student save his questions to after the dars. He said, nextly, إِذَا سَأَلَ الْعَالِمُ يُحْسِنُ سُؤَالَهُ وَإِذَا حَسَنَ السُّؤَالِ فَإِنَّ حُسْنُ السُّؤَالِ نِصْفُ الْعِلْمِ. He said, next, that when he asks a question to the scholar, that he asks in the best way, with clear words. He speaks clearly. He doesn't ask something theoretically, if such and such and such and such was to happen, then what would be the ruling? About something that is really happening. They call that al-fiqh al-iftiradi. They call that theoretical fiqh. Theoretical fiqh. Making rulings about things that haven't occurred yet. Many of the Salaf, it is reported authentically from many of the Salaf that they used to dislike this type of question. A question about something that hasn't occurred. So when you ask a question about something that has occurred and make it seem as though it hasn't occurred, that this is something that shows that you don't know how to answer, or you don't know how to ask a question correctly. You don't know how to ask the question correctly. You should be straightforward in what you say. Also, from asking questions in a good way, I'm sure Muhammad Shabani, he could give you all kinds of complaints that he probably has about how people ask the questions. And anybody who translates questions for the people of knowledge, they could probably do the same. From that is that you don't ask a question to a scholar in a general sitting that requires a qadi. Don't ask about a khula. For the sisters, they shouldn't ask about a khula from their husbands. In a general, it happens. Wallahi, it happens. The people that ask questions like that, they ask questions involving a dispute about a debt, something that requires for both parties to be there. For both parties to be there. And there are many things outside of this that a person should observe, and الإنسان على نفسه بصيرة, that the